This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the weekly Movie Bears podcast. At the siren, all other stuff you're doing must be suspended in order for you to listen for the next 1.5 hours. Your podcast hosts thank you for your participation. Whoop, whoop. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Welcome to the Movie Bears podcast, everybody. I'm Brad Harris, and it's good to have all of you back with us this week. If you're a fan of the show, or if you're new to the show, you should know that me and my delightful co-hosts love to talk about one of our favorite things in the whole wide universe, that being movies, hence the movie and Movie Bears podcast. With me, as usual, are those aforementioned co-hosts. Jim Pliofka. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is here, too. Hello, Will.
Hey, movie fans. Glad to be back with you again, especially for this week's episode. We're going to be talking about some fun ones, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So, as alluded in my terrible podcast intro, we're going to be talking about the newest installment of the Purge franchise, that, of course, being the Purge election year. Good, bad, I don't know. We'll talk about it. We'll see. But we're also going to be talking about our favorite films of 2016, parentheses, so far, because we're only like halfway through the year. A little more than halfway at this point, I guess. So Oscar season hasn't even come into the picture yet. But we thought, you know what? It's a nice break between blockbusters. Why don't we take a few moments to kind of reflect? So we are excited to do that. Guys, tons of stuff to talk about tonight. Are we ready to talk about our top films?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, it's been a year so far in movies. I don't know how this one stacks up. For a while there, I got to thinking that, man, this year, other than a few things here and there, I don't know. It's been kind of a down year, maybe just especially for the big blockbusters. I don't know. Maybe that's what's going on, and maybe you got to dig a little deeper this year to find the really good stuff. But
you gotta dig deep, man.
You gotta dig deep.
Well, last year by this time, both in terms of blockbusters and in terms of like super popular, like both critical and fan-based movies, you had Mad Max: Fury Road. So by this time of the year, last time, that was on the list, and that was something that you could use as your tentpole. Like, yeah, this was a great blockbuster. Yeah, this was a critical darling. Yeah, this is one that just the average fan went and saw. I think this year, at least for me, and we'll see what you guys' lists are, I don't think there's been the slam dunk pick like maybe there was by this time last year, but there are quite a few really good movies out there, and so I'm really happy to share three of my favorites.
Yeah, I agree, Will. I think you can, if you look, you can find some that are maybe the critical darlings, but you're going to have to dig deep for those. You're going to find some that were, really popular, but maybe, and maybe they did okay with the critics, but not a lot of people are still talking about them. It's kind of all over the place. I don't think the stars are aligned yet.
I mean, I'm like the guy on the show who always is like, guys, we can't talk about these super cool indie movies because 95% of our audience isn't watching these super cool indie movies. So let's talk about a blockbuster. But I'm looking at like
your
list,
top three.
And I'm like, huh? How
your list should tell you something.
That none of these are blockbuster films.
Right? I'm gonna. The great thing is that this is gonna be a surprise to all of us. I don't know what's on Brad and Jim's list. I know what's on my list. So, listeners, you're gonna be we're gonna be exploring each other's lists live at the same time that you're listening to us. I'm wondering how much overlap there's gonna be. And now that I'm hearing all of these things, I'm over under on at least one of my films being duplicated on one of your lists. I wouldn't be surprised if there's at least one repeat. But we'll see.
That sounds like a dirty growler thing, like your private list has been unlocked.
Well, I mean, if that was a thing on Growler, I'd be on there way more often.
Hey.
What are your favorite movie lists?
You're hot. Will you unblock your private movie list for me?
Oh, my goodness.
Only if you do first.
Oh my God.
Don't just unlock your movie list for me without saying hello first, okay? Like etiquette.
I'm a human being. I'm more than just a shirtless torso who likes indie movies.
Oh goodness! All right. Well, we do have a lot of movies to potentially get through, right? Because as you mentioned, Will, our list may not be the same, right? So we may have several films here that we want to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off with a film that we actually just saw this weekend. Actually, it's funny. So 4th of July weekend, like we went to some pool parties, and people, obviously are like, "Oh man, it's summer movie season. Like, what's the last great movie that you saw?" And I'm like, "Oh, geez, like it's been a while. It's hard to answer that question. I don't know." So we ended up seeing the movie yesterday on Monday at the time of this recording that I wish I had seen before, because it would have been a great one to bring up when people ask this question. I'm talking about a movie that was written and directed by Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert called Swiss Army Man. And this one has been getting some interesting buzz. It stars Paul Dano from Looper and Love and Mercy, as well as Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter fame. Basically, the IMDb plot is a homeless man stranded in the wilderness befriends a dead body, and together they go on a surreal journey to get home. If that sounds kind of crazy and out there, that's because it motherfucking is. But it totally works for me. Like, I don't want to spoil this for you guys, for anyone that has not seen it yet. But man, this movie does so much that sort of defeats my like summer blockbuster like sigh predictability brain. There's just so much inventiveness in what this film does, from the interactions between Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe's characters. I say characters because Daniel Radcliffe is a dead body, but there's just a lot of phenomenal acting here. The writing is fucking incredible, and I gotta tell you, I haven't been in this love with a movie soundtrack, I think, since Life of Pi and The Good Dinosaur. I mean, I have been listening to this soundtrack a lot since I bought it yesterday, seconds after walking out of the movie. I had some admin to do at work today after a bunch of meetings, and I just had it on repeat. And I won't spoil by talking about what movie theme is in this movie, but it gets the award for the most inventive use of another movie's theme ever, in my book. So I loved this movie. Jim, I know you saw it with me. I don't know if it made your list, but did you like it? Will, how about you?
Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, yeah. I cheated a little bit on my list. This movie might have made my list, and it might still be in my top 10 at the end of the year. I did love this movie. I love movies that tell a story in a different way, and this movie definitely did that. Like you said, Brad, the performances are great, soundtrack. Just the inventiveness of this movie really kind of washed over me. I love the themes presented in this movie. They're all human, very human themes that are explored in the story. It's not on my list per se, but it was one that I might have mentioned later had you not brought it up. I'm surprised that it was at your number one, and maybe that's because we just saw it yesterday or whatever.
Well, it's not my number one.
Oh, you're number three. That's right.
It's my number three, but
okay.
But that's still number 3 is still really good.
Yeah. It's a very strange movie. You may hear some descriptions about it, like what's in the movie. Don't let that dissuade you from going to see this movie. See it while it's out. I think I loved it. Just something different. You won't see movies like this all the time, so go see it.
Right.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to switch the order of 2 of mine. This was my number 2 film, but I'm going to talk about it now and talk about my number 3 film next. Just the timing is perfect. Might as well talk about it now. So yeah, my number 2 film of the year so far is Swiss Army Man. You guys hit on a lot of the major things. This is a film that this is probably my most anticipated film of the last few months. It's been very heavily promoted down here in Austin. My theater has a wall of probably about 40 Swiss Army Man posters, and I'm not exaggerating. And it's been like, so so I've been excited about this for a while, and I'm so glad that it delivered. if anyone that heard the buzz out of Sundance, you probably heard that this was the Farting Corpse movie. And it is the Farting Corpse movie. But I think even more so, this is a film that it's a visual delight. These guys are, Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, these are guys that kind of cut their teeth doing direction of like music videos. They did like the Turn Down for What Lil Jon video. So they have this certain tempo to their direction that translates extremely well to what they do on screen here. This is a film that lives and dies on the performances by Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe, who both turn in extraordinary work here. Paul Dano plays this. He plays kind of like this, and this is his role in every movie, and he does it so well. He's both lovable and slightly off to the point where it's hard for you to really pin him down as like being completely like, smiley or like, man, maybe there's a bit of an edge or something else going on here, and it fits perfectly. Daniel Radcliffe does a lot of his performance in a very limited way, and it's phenomenal. The music, you're absolutely right. The entire soundtrack was done by this group called Manchester Orchestra, and they're one of my absolute favorite bands. I've seen them a few times. They are phenomenal. Brad, I've also been listening to this one quite a bit since I saw it. I'm right there with you. This movie touches on so many themes of what it is to connect with another human being, what it is to connect with your own body, the connection of like, I mean, honestly, even some of the themes get into things like, the connection of body to like godliness. It's crazy the amount of things that are hiding under the surface of this movie. We could uncover easily 40 or 50 themes if we untangled every single one of them. That to me is a mark of a good film. Absolutely, you should go watch this one right now. Swiss Army Man, phenomenal.
Excellent.
All right.
Excellent.
Yeah. There you have it. Two strong recommendations from Will and I. It was on our list. Jim, maybe it's on your list somewhere or in your top 10. So, if you're looking for something great to see, Swiss Army Man is kind of out in wide release right now. So definitely go check it out. Jim, what's your number 3? Well, you're not going in any certain order, right?
It's
kind of a nebulous.
I'll give you one of my movies. It was one we saw earlier in the year, and I don't remember everybody's reaction to it. It's one that kind of stuck with me when we saw it. It's called Demolition, and this is the Jean-Marc Vallée film starring Jake Gyllenhaal about this guy at the beginning of the film, and this is not really a spoiler because it happens in the trailer. But he loses his wife early in the film in the tragedy, and his life is flipped upside down. His whole personality and persona is changed, and he has to try to rediscover himself. And it's got its quirks. And Jake Gyllenhaal, I think, is amazing in this movie. It's got I love Jean-Marc Vallée's direction. He did Dallas Buyers Club, which we also liked. This movie was, hit the right emotions for me. Kind of took me to some unexpected places, introduced me to some new characters that I liked. It's somewhere on my list of the top 3 right now, and we'll see where it falls at the end of the year. This movie came out and was kind of forgotten by critics and the community. It really didn't get any. It was weird. It got practically no marketing whatsoever. It was just kind of put out there early in the year and didn't get enough attention, and I was kind of surprised by that. I don't know if it will get some kind of resurrection or some kind of re-release or something toward the end of the year. I don't know. It's probably doubtful, but it's just one that stuck with me, and if you can still find it around, it might even be on Blu-ray at this point. Check out Demolition.
Oh, yeah, absolutely a great pick, Jim. We actually saw this film at South by Southwest Film. We reviewed it on the show as well, so, certainly it's one that we all very much enjoyed. Jake Gyllenhaal gives probably his best performance to date, in my mind, in this film. There's just so much emotion unpacking in this movie. Like, when we saw it, I don't think I felt that many emotions, sort of burst through the emotion dam at one time in a movie in several years. And one of the reasons I go to see movies or plays or musicals is because I want to feel something. Like I want them to just rip me apart, make me feel all this stuff, and then put me back together again. And this one certainly does that. So totally co-sign your pick.
Really good, really good. Yeah, it's further down on my list. It's probably bottom half of my top 10, but that's still a good place to be, I'd say, for a movie. Great direction. The performance is really strong. Couple different story beats, both of which go different directions, converge in some interesting places. Lots of fun. Or maybe fun's not the right word, but it's a good watch. It's a good watch. Yeah.
Very good.
All right. Awesome.
Glad you guys remembered that one.
Oh, yeah.
It seems so long ago when we saw it. It's weird.
Right? I know. Like, that was back in March, and it's July already, which I can't believe. We're going to be getting ready for our Christmas show, like, any day now, guys. Like, the year is flying by.
Yeah. Ugly sweater contest. Let's go.
Right. Well, speaking of flying by, we're on to our second round of picks here. I won't say our number 2 picks because, Jim, I know you're kind of going through this nebulous order thing, which is totally cool. I'm down.
These are my favorite 3 so far.
Nice. That's a great way of putting it. So the next one for me is another film that we saw at South by Southwest Film that is now starting to come out and become available for some folks, and that is called Hunt for the Wilder People. This is directed, and I know I'm pronouncing his name wrong. Will, I know you're going to like snootily correct me when I pronounce it wrong or something.
Okay.
But is it Taika Waititi?
No, it's Taika Waititi, Brad. Ugh.
Yeah, see, I told you. Where's your craft beer to go with like your correct? Anyway, he directed this movie. He also directed What We Do in the Shadows, and he's directing the upcoming Thor Ragnarok. So when you think of like Hunt for the Wilder People versus like a fucking Thor movie, it's like, wait, what? But he also wrote the screenplay for this. Now, this was based on a book by Barry Crump, but he wrote the screenplay. This movie stars Sam Neill of Jurassic Park fame. So there's kind of a, hello, Sam Neill. Glad to see you again. As well as newcomer Julian Dennison. Basically, the plot, again, from IMDb, because you know what? It's the official synopsis. A national manhunt is ordered for a rebellious kid and his foster uncle who go missing in the wild New Zealand bush. If you watch the trailer for this movie, this looks like kind of a wild, crazy, zany adventure of like a ghetto fat kid and his like bushman uncle in New Zealand. It's kind of a crazy sort of coming of age / adventure. I hate to say family movie because the language in this film, it is not a family movie. But I tell you, this is one of those movies where like we were looking through the book at South by and we're like, what movies do we want to see? And I'm like, this sounds interesting. I like Sam Neill, but... And I came out of this movie just freaking blown away. Like, I want to see this movie again so bad. I don't think it's in Tucson yet, unfortunately. But it's one of my favorite films of this year. Another film with a kind of a cool adventure wilderness theme. So Swiss Army Man, Hunt for the Wilder People, they're both taking place in the wilderness. I loved Wild last year, 2 years ago, whenever that was. Maybe I have a thing for forests, guys. Maybe that's what this is all leading to. I don't know. But did you guys enjoy this one?
Oh, yeah. When we were at... I had heard a little bit of the buzz on this movie that came out of Sundance before we went to South by, and I'm like, this is one I do not want to miss. It went on my must-see list right away. I'm glad we got to see it. And it didn't disappoint. This is a movie that's going to appeal, I think, to a wide audience. I think this is a crowd-pleasing type movie. It's got a great performances by Sam Neill. It's got this newcomer. What was his name, Brad? I forget what his name was.
Julian Dennison.
Yeah, Julian Dennison, some talented kid they found down there in New Zealand. And who just kind of, he carries the movie. Basically, it'll knock your socks off. Just comes across so national. A bad egg. That guy. Whatever they call him. Anyway, yeah, but I think what sells this movie is its heart. It in the end, it's got a lot of heart. And again, I resonate with movies that I watch movies not just with my eyes and ears, but with my heart too. So, and I felt this one. So, if when this movie comes out, and I think it's going to get a pretty good release, please go see Hunt for the Wilder People. Forget the strange name. Run out and see this one. I think you'll like it.
Maybe the strange name makes it more memorable when you come across this in your listings a month from now or whenever. You're just like, oh yeah, I think I remember hearing those guys talk about it. Love this movie. Didn't quite make my list, but not through any fault of the film. I enjoyed it quite a bit when we watched it at South by. The direction is strong. For the performance by the newcomer in this one is quite good. He carries a lot of the comedy on his shoulders, and he carries it well. Definitely worth watching.
Cool. Very good.
All right. Awesome. Well, I'm glad I'm not alone in that pick. So, Will, what's your? Well, let's see. Yeah. Wait. No. Yes. Will, it's your turn.
Yeah. And mine's in reverse order because I did number 2 last, and I'm on my number 3 here. But
whatever the fuck order.
We've got orders. I'm going to carry on with your theme of the woods, though. My film is based in the woods and features some of the kind of spooky things that happen there. I'm talking about what I consider to be one of the scariest movies of the year, The Witch. All right, so a little bit about The Witch. This film was written and directed by Robert Eggers, and it's about this family back in the 1630s. They're in New England, and they're cast out from society and live by themselves on the edge of the woods, and then paranoia and the occult threaten to draw a wedge between their family. And I'll leave it there in terms of the description. This film kept me guessing all the way through. You don't quite know exactly what's happening until you kind of find out for real what actually is happening. This film features basically 2 parents and 4 children, and all of the child performances are top-notch, including some really young kids who, this set of twins who don't have a lot of screen time, but what they do have is quite compelling. I think for my money, when I think of horror movies, when I think of effective thrillers, I take away all your jump scares. I don't care how good your CGI is. I don't care, how many buckets of blood you pour on me. I want something that's going to get underneath my skin and stay there. I want something like 2014's The Babadook, or I want something like this year's The Witch. Hands down, one of the most unsettling movies I've ever seen, but damn, is it good.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to jump the gun and switch a couple of my picks around too, and go with I'll call it my number 2, even though it was the first one I thought of when we were talking about lists, and it's the same movie, The Witch. I love this movie. We've seen it a couple times now. I bought the Blu-ray. Man, this is a great movie to watch with the lights off. We watched it in a cabin with the lights off, just a fire going on the side, and turned on the subtitles, because that's one of the things you're going to find in this movie is subtitles do help, even though they're speaking English, because there's some strange language that they use in this movie, and it will help, I think, most people's understanding to be able to clearly know what that language is. Just super creepy, unsettling. This movie, again, refreshingly different. This movie had so much commitment to making the vision that they had. They created this through production design, setting up this, the setting of these settlers in 1630 in the woods, the dialogue authenticity, just a real dark atmosphere of isolation and dread. I loved everything about this movie. This is kind of what I want. I want to feel something when I watch a horror movie. I don't necessarily respond to a bunch of jump scares like we've seen in a lot of these movies. This movie gives you a real sense of terror, and throughout the movie, what the fuck is going on? What's going to happen next? And that's what I loved about it. So, yeah, this one definitely going to be high on my list, probably at the end of the year too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jim, is this one of your official picks then, or no?
It is one of my official picks.
Right.
It's
It
and
is.
I jumped the gun and I was going to save this one to be the last one I discussed. I won't say it's number one, but it was going to be the last one I discussed.
Yeah, well, I definitely, and Jim too, you guys picked a great one. It didn't quite make my list. It's a great film. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed it a lot more when I could watch it with the subtitles on. Jim, you're absolutely right. I remember seeing this in the theaters, and I was just getting so frustrated because I could not understand like what the fuck they were saying sometimes. Because not only is it like in this old dialect and they speak weird, but they're also mumbling all the time, blah blah blah. And like when you fucking have mumble lips, like I can't. Like I don't know. I can't understand you. So, but yeah, definitely like horror is not my go-to genre, guys, and like most horror movies, like do not scare me at all. The Witch kind of freaked me out a little bit, especially when we saw it like up at the cabin, and then like our buddy Brian Dark was like outside, and I went out to go see what he's up to, and he's like standing out in the middle of the field, just looking into the tree line. I'm like, oh my god, like is Black Phillip out there? Like, what the hell is going on?
Oh God, it's happening. Oh God.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, but yeah, good pick, Jim.
Yeah, I'm the kind of guy who, like, when I watch a movie, I've got to be immersed in the movie. I can't like stop and start a movie like at home. That's why I like the movie theater better, because it forces you to get involved in the movie. This is that kind of movie. You've got to buy in to, put yourself in that situation to get the full effect, and it really works.
Yeah, great choice. All right, well, for me, I can't believe we're at our last round of picks, guys, already. This is crazy, but I guess we are. So this is yet another movie that we saw at South by Southwest. But it has been out in theaters. Unfortunately, it's come and gone, I think, at this point, so if you haven't seen it, you'll have to wait for the Blu-ray. But this is the third film in a row for me, guys, that were written and directed by the same person, which... I don't know. That's kind of a common theme. This one was written and directed by John Carney. I'm speaking, of course, of Sing Street. My God, this year has been a great year for movie soundtracks. I mentioned earlier that Swiss Army Man had a phenomenal soundtrack, one of the best soundtracks I've heard in a long time. And as much as I enjoy that soundtrack, Will, you can ask Jim. I am kind of obsessed with the Sing Street soundtrack. Like, every time we get into my car, it's either Adele or Sing Street, which I think drives him a little bit crazy. But, but man, so many great songs in this movie. If you haven't seen the film yet, the basic setup, again, IMDb description, full faith and credit where due. Boy growing up in Dublin during the 1980s escapes his strained family life by starting a band to impress the mysterious girl he likes. If this sounds like every other fucking movie you've seen, that's because it sounds like every other movie you've seen. But I guarantee you, this film maybe takes some tired story beats and does them in a way that is just magical in like every way possible. Like, even though on the surface it maybe sounds like a lot of other films that you've seen, I think it's incredibly inventive. I think it's phenomenally heartfelt, and I gotta say, I've talked about the soundtrack already, but the music just infuses this movie. And what I love is like the evolution of the band. Like, they've come up with these original songs for the Sing Street Band in the film, and kind of like the song that they start with is very different from the song that they kind of end with when they kind of like congeal and really hit their stride. So it's kind of reignited my interest in like 80s bands and kind of following their like musical progression. And I love that a movie can do that. You know what I mean? So great movie for me. What about for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Will.
Go for it, Jim.
Okay, I mean, I love the immersion in the 80s. My musical awakening happened during the 80s, so my musical reawakening, I should say, happened during the 80s. So I kind of resonate with all that stuff. I love to see, this was a coming of age movie, again with heart and emotion, which was another hook for me. And I thought the acting was really good throughout. We see Littlefinger from Game of Thrones in this movie.
What's he got planned?
I know. Yeah, he wasn't very good in this movie either, as far as human beings go. But yeah, this one kind of came out of left field. It got a little release here. Didn't get a big release, so I expect to be seeing that one on VOD pretty soon.
Yeah, this one should be hitting VOD soon. In fact, I want to say I saw this one. This has been a good week for VOD. If anyone hasn't checked like Amazon lately, like 4 or 5 fantastic movies hit today, and several more scheduled for next week. And I think I remember seeing Sing Street on deck for like the 12th of July, so right around the corner.
Nice.
I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that was one of the ones I saw on that list. Yeah, this one's a lot of fun. Really, really interesting music. The 80s vibe from the emergence of this band, and like and even like the music that's pulled in from other sources, like the Duran Duran stuff and what have you, is all very welcome here in this movie. For me personally, I think the ending probably knocked it out of my list, but I don't think that's necessarily like a deal killer for me. I still think this is a very good movie and one that I think is very much worth watching. And I think it's one that I think a general audience would like too. I don't think that I'd have to recommend to, just one specific audience. I think this one's pretty wide in terms of who might like this film.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I know, some of the movies that we're talking about, especially my top 3, right? They're not those films that like are constantly being advertised on TV that are in your face. They're not Star Wars: The Force Awakens or Captain America: Civil War, right? But if you're one of those people that's like, man, I really wish we could see something original. I really wish we could see something that's not a sequel or a franchise movie. Hopefully, some of the films that we're talking about give you some ideas. But Will, what's your next pick?
All right, my number 1 film of the year so far with a bullet. I don't think this one's going to be difficult for you guys to guess because I've talked about it enough on this show, and it is Green Room. So Green Room was written and directed by Jeremy Saulnier, and hey, guess what, Brad? I just looked at my list, and all 3 of mine had the same writer-director too. So it's a fun little theme that's happening here. So Green Room is this film about this punk band. They decide that, you know what, we're going to accept this gig playing at this skinhead bar. Things go wrong, and it's punk band pitted against the skinheads, led by Patrick Stewart, in a fight for their survival. This is a beautifully shot movie, one of the most beautifully shot movies of the year, which is funny considering it's a thriller and considering it's set in a punk bar. But there are some moments of absolute pure beauty that come across the screen here. The music is fantastic. This is another one where the filmmaker understood the music. I mean, this is all about just that really aggressive, driving punk rock. And they steer into it, and they steer into it well. We have some great performances here. Of course, the one that's most important to talk about would be the leading role by Anton Yelchin, who unfortunately just recently passed. And it's a hard hit to the film fandom. This is a guy who was on the rise to just be, I think, something phenomenal, and this film here is absolute testament to that. Jeremy Saulnier is, I don't know if I would call him my favorite filmmaker right now, but he is in the discussion for my favorite filmmaker between this and Blue Ruin and even Murder Party a few years back. This film is a must-see, especially if you love tense thrillers or if you love stories that kind of go unconventional directions. God, I love this fucking movie so much.
Yeah, Will, we were anxious to see this movie because you got to see it, I think, at Fantastic Fest, right?
That's right, yeah.
So you got to see it actually last year. And a lot of these movies that we've mentioned, maybe some of them anyway, have gotten a pre-2016 early release date. But yeah, I loved it. I love the fact that this was what we call kind of like a bottle movie or a bottle story, where everything kind of takes place around one, be it one room or one central confined space or location. man, just a lot of mayhem in this movie. Unexpected stuff happens, and still, some great performances. We talked about Anton Yelchin. So sad to see him go.
Yeah.
Too early. I mean, he was a young talent, and he was, killing it in the movies that he was in. I'm going to see him again in the Star Trek movie that's coming out. And
just a few weeks from now.
Yeah, be reminded of that again. But yeah, definitely. This is another one of those small films that I don't even know if it got any kind of a marketing or it got a little bit of marketing, but not enough. Not enough to really put over the edge. But I think it was still quite successful for a small movie. And I can't wait to see what Saulnier does next. I love Blue Ruin. I actually like Blue Ruin a little bit more than this one, which is why this one didn't quite make my list. But I am looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is another one of those films where, like, it was so hyped, and it was so hyped, and it was so hyped. I think it didn't quite make my list. I really enjoyed it, but I'm wondering if maybe, you know me, guys, when something is hyped like crazy, I sort of have this, like, anti-hype thing that comes into play. And I'm like, really? This is the thing that everyone's going nuts over? But it actually kind of overcame that a bit. And I tell you what, best Patrick Stewart performance, like, since a Star Trek movie.
I wanted more. I wanted more Patrick Stewart.
I want a prequel movie with Patrick Stewart. Like,
oh, yeah.
Wouldn't that be awesome? That would be great. Mm-hmm. Anyway. But great pick, Will. Jim, close this list out.
Okay. I mentioned bottle movies. My number one, quote unquote, for this list is a movie, probably might even be the highest grossing movie of the closest to a blockbuster that we could say. It's 10 Cloverfield Lane.
No.
I love this movie because this is one of those movies that there wasn't much advance notice for this movie. Kind of came out of nowhere. Kind of brand new, not brand new director, but an upcoming director, Dan Trachtenberg, directed this movie. It basically has 3 people in it, and all takes place underground. Well, I'm going to say all takes place kind of underground, in one confined space. So there you go, bottle movie. John Goodman gives, and all the actors here, John Gallagher Jr., Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and John Goodman, but especially, give amazing performances. I mean, who knew what John Goodman was doing, in the last few years leading up to this movie and what he was in. We saw him in the Coen Brothers movie, I think, a little bit. Help me out with that.
Yeah, he was in Oh Brother, right?
No,
this year, Hail Caesar.
Hail Caesar, yeah, right.
In Hail Caesar? I know he was in the one before that, wasn't he?
Which one?
I can't think of it. The singer. About the singer.
Inside Llewyn Davis.
Inside Llewyn Davis, yeah, wasn't he? I think he was in that one. Anyway, great performance by John Goodman. Just some crazy suspense and not knowing where this movie's going to end up, and ends up in some crazy places that I won't spoil. Is it tied to the original Cloverfield movie, or is it not? That's a question you'll have to answer for yourself when you see this movie, because I am not going to spoil it. But I love that sense of surprise that this movie kind of gave us, leading up to its release, the anticipation when we saw it, and then the execution of this movie, I think, was fantastic. So there you go, 10 Cloverfield Lane. It might be on my list at the end of the year.
Yeah, totally co-signed. This one made my top 10. This one was one of the ones that I had a short list of films I was considering for this list, and this was on that short list. I love I love good limited storytelling, and this film does that extraordinarily well. It focuses everything around one setting, and this is another film that pulls a lot of tension out of thin air, and it does so effectively. The tension doesn't feel like a cheat. Other great thing about this movie is, I think, and we've been very vague about what goes on in it, and there's a reason for that. This is a film that best go into this one 100% blind and just let it take you for all of its different turns. Great pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's one of those movies where it's like, you know, the less you know going in, the better. I absolutely co-sign that. But I think it's hard to do that though with a Cloverfield movie, right? And I think a lot of people actually avoided this movie because the original Cloverfield was like not something that they enjoyed. And I'll tell you, as someone who pretty much hated the original Cloverfield, this movie blew my socks off. I absolutely loved it. So if you're someone who, you know, that is detracting you from seeing this movie, don't let it, because you might just enjoy it.
Yep, and it is, I think, out on VOD right now. I think you can find it on like Amazon and Hulu, so you can rent it. So go check it out.
There you go. Well, there's our top films of 2016 so far. Still a lot of the year left to go, including Oscar season. So no doubt a lot more phenomenal films coming out. I'm really interested, guys, to see where these movies end up once we're on the other side of Oscar season. Not only Oscar season, but hell, we've got a Star Wars movie coming too. So who knows?
Well, yeah, and I think the other thing too is like a little bit of distance from these films will always impact our lists as well. Last year's list, some films that weren't in my top 10 at mid-year, the more and more I thought about them and rewatched them, they crept their way back up into that list. So it's possible some of these might drop down, and some of the ones that are in our like 4 through 8 slot may rise. That's what's so great about film and loving film so much, is that, you know, we can keep examining and re-examining and keep listing and keep relisting. I can't wait until that episode, and it's 6 months away.
A film will rise.
And the good one, you know, as you kind of alluded to there, well, I mean, the good ones stay with us. You know what I mean? They stay in our consciousness, and that allows us, you know, to think about them more and maybe give them a little bit more, maybe give them a second viewing, whatever, and they can creep up the list.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. Well, guys, we are almost an hour into the show. We haven't even gotten to the Purge yet. Yeah, it was funny. We slotted 30 minutes for that segment. It's been like 45, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's pretty good, actually.
It's pretty good for us.
For us, that's good.
We're running on time, so we're
That's
good.
how much time that needed. That felt like a good discussion.
Maybe we'll have to pull a little bit of time out of our movie review. Who knows?
Maybe.
Well,
Maybe we won't need that much time. I don't know. But we should probably get to it. Are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
I'm ready.
All right. So for
Purge
those of
and
you,
purify.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar with our format, if you're worried about hanging out with us because we might spoil you, fret not. We're going to talk about the movie spoiler-free, at least at first, and then we'll give you fair warning before we get into the spoiler meat and potatoes of our review. So that said, here we go. Our discussion of The Purge election year. All right, so Jim, why don't you give us the basic setup of this film, as well as whether you'd recommend people see it or not?
Sure. This is the third Purge film, or the third film in the series of Purge movies that we started with, oh my God, way back in, I don't know, 2012 maybe? Anyway, this one was written and directed. Hey, this is a theme of the show, right? Written and directed by the same dude. His name is James DeMarco. He's done all three films. I don't know if this has been done many times. We have one person, and one person only, doing writing and directing of three major release motion pictures, 1, 2, 3. I don't know. I'm sure it has, but I think it's kind of rare. Anyway, so let me give you the rundown of this movie. I'm just going to read a synopsis for you guys. Senator and presidential candidate Charlie Roan is determined to end the yearly tradition of the Purge bloodlust once and for all. When her opponents hatch a deadly scheme, the senator finds herself trapped on the streets of Washington, D.C., just as the latest Purge gets underway. Now, it's up to Leo Barnes, Frank Grillo, as her head of security to keep her alive during the next 12 hours of mayhem. So there you go. There's a setup of the movie. Basically, it's the Purge again. We know the Purge, since the first movie, we know the Purge now happens once a year. I think it's on Halloween, right? The Purge happens on Halloween.
No, it's sometime in May.
Is it?
Yeah, because at one point in the middle of the film, they say something like they actually show the date, and it's something like in May.
Oh, okay.
I think it's 2 months prior to that. I can't say why yet, but there's a very specific...
Okay. Well, you can tell us later. But anyway, once a year, 12 hours. Everything. All crime is, as the warning goes, all crime is legal up to and including murder, and it's kind of a free for all. Either you decide to participate in the Purge or hide from the Purge. And it leads to a lot of discussions about what one's strategy might be. So anyway, having seen all three of these movies now, look, I really kind of liked the second movie quite a bit. The first movie was okay. Ethan Hawke was in that movie, so that was pretty good. I forget who the mom was, but I kind of liked the second movie, and I liked the direction that the franchise was going in. It seemed like the first movie was, again, a bottle movie. The second movie had more to say, I thought, about social issues and violence and what it means to society and what it means to us as Americans. And unfortunately, this movie hammers on the same themes as the second movie did. And I was hoping that it would do it kind of in a new and interesting way, but for me, it didn't. It felt like more of the same, just with a different plot to propel the story, a different main plot, and that being the one I talked about, which is the this presidential candidate who's against the Purge, and then the people who are for the Purge who want to take her out. I was on board fully for like the first 20 minutes of this movie. I thought there were a couple of interesting setups. Compelling storylines I thought that were set up at the beginning of this movie, and started to do things kind of building on what it had in the second movie, and then it kind of fell short. Some of those storylines went into predictable plot tropes and down that road, and some of them they really didn't do much with at all because I think they were so interested in their election year plot. Anyway. All I can say is I would say that I was really on the fence of this movie. I think this is a kind of a mild pass for me, meaning I'm just on the downside of recommending this movie. If you've seen the second one, I think you've seen the best of this series so far. I don't know if the series is going to continue. I don't know if it's going. I can tell you by the money that these things make versus how much they cost to make. I don't think they're going away very soon. I mean, the first one made $64 million on a $3 million budget. I mean, that's insane profit figure. Second one, $71 million on a $9 million budget, and this one $36 million so far on a $10 million budget. So, I mean, they're going to continue. I just want to. I think there's some things in these movies that I really could attach to. I just wish the story in this one was better. And they threw some more different things at us, and they didn't. Anyway, what do you say, Brad?
Yeah, so I think I liked it better than you did. I think part of that is because I very, very much enjoy Elizabeth Mitchell. She played one of my favorite characters from Lost, Juliet. I think she's a fun actress. She has this sort of nuance, like warmth and wit and like approachability that I just find really intriguing for some reason. So I found her engaging as a character, even if a lot of the plot beats in this film are pretty predictable, as Purge movies go. I will say I don't think it's better than 2, but I do think it's better than 1. One of the things, spoiler alert for The Purge Anarchy, that I loved about the second film is it's all just sort of this like random chaotic adventure through like open world Purge land. Whereas I feel like this movie has a more mainstay throughput plot line. Try saying that 3 times fast. So it seems more like moving from point A to point B to point C to point D in the plot than it is like, oh my god, here's this crazy thing that happened. Turn the corner, run away. Oh my god, here's another crazy random thing. There's some of that, and I really love that stuff about The Purge, but it's not as prevalent in this film. I do think that it has something really interesting to say politically. This also being an election year, I felt like there were some parallels, if you will, to some of the politicking that's going on right now, and I don't know. It made me a little uncomfortable in some ways. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about it in spoilers. But like, you talk about like the 1% versus the none percent. None percent, is that a thing? I don't know. I just coined it. But you think sort of about that class struggle, right? And really, in a way, that's kind of what The Purge is. And I tell you what. Like it makes me a little worried, actually, that we could maybe go down that route someday if the right people get into office, which maybe sounds extreme, but hey, you never know what could happen. I also think it's really interesting that this movie, and if you watch the trailer, I mean, this senator, she wants to end the purge, right? The violence and everything is horrible. It's sort of advocating against this violence, and yet these movies do nothing but like ramp up and promote violence in a way. So I don't know. I'm not saying they're saying you should go out and purge, but I am saying, like, I mean, if you're a crazy person watching one of these movies, maybe you're gonna go get your gun and go purge and purify. You know what I mean? So I don't quite know how to feel about that, I guess. It's a little weird for me. But I had fun. I thought it was an enjoyable ride. These films always kind of remind me of, like, haunted houses in a way. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like in a haunted house, you go from, like, one area where something's set up to another area where something's set up, and you kind of go from A to B to C and hope you make your way out. And I mean, I don't know. They're always a little bit of a thrill ride for me. This one tried to have more of a comedic element than the previous films did as well. We'll talk more about that in spoilers. I don't think that worked quite as well for me. But it's definitely a recommend for me. I mean, it's a summer popcorn movie. It's by no means a great movie. I mean, if you're going into it expecting like high drama, crazy, amazing character development, you're not going to get that. I mean, if you go into this knowing what it is, you might have a better experience. But I have a feeling, Will, your opinion is going to differ quite a bit, and I'm anxious to hear what you have to say. So, what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, I go into all of these like I want to see good movies. That's all of our goal. We want every movie to be a 5-star movie, and so every time we watch one of these, I'm thinking like, well, maybe this is the one. Maybe this is the one that'll turn it around. Because historically, I've not enjoyed the previous installments, and I'm very happy to say that this film. I can't even continue with this. I fucking hate this movie. This is a contender for my least favorite film of the year. I think there's probably one or two that are slightly above it.
Below it?
Below it. Yeah. This is a year when Gods of Egypt exists, so I think The Purge kind of sneaks slightly ahead of it. I don't know if that's a ringing endorsement. So my problem with this franchise is that I think that it tries to be both things, and by that I mean it tries to be sharp or smart political satire and commentary, and it also wants to be a thrill-seeking, reckless bloodbath. And I think you can do that effectively. I don't think this film knows how to do that effectively. My problem comes down to the satire side of things. This film very, very heavily all throughout it has the good guy characters, the super obvious good guy characters, and they spend the entire time, whenever they try to relate to each other, it's always some combination of the Purge is bad. Did you know that the Purge is bad? This thing that's happening out the window, it's very bad. I like her because she thinks the Purge is bad. And at a certain point, you go like, oh, okay, so I guess what they're trying to tell me is that the Purge is bad. Meanwhile, the villains are extremely obvious villains. They're either they wear these stupid masks and they turn into these psychopaths on March 21st. We looked up the date. March 21st is when the Purge is, and they do these creepy dances, and it's like half the fucking world is apparently like a mask-wearing murderer, and the other half is like a good guy, noble savior in the middle of the night. There's no one in between. And then, of course, the behind-the-scenes people are the white, rich Republican, air quote, stand-ins, like twirling their mustaches and being like extremely dastardly in their villainy. If you're going to do political satire, you have to be able to either play the margins a little bit more, play the nuance, kind of let some of the fun territory come out, or veer more into the crazy, reckless stuff. As it stands, this film tries to do both, does neither effectively. We'll talk a little bit more in the spoiler section, but I felt like the main characters of this film, there was no real stakes for them. I never felt like they were actually in any harm or danger. And that's a problem when you have a film that's all about surviving the night. This film just did not do a really good job of setting up like believable tension, believable fear, believable threat. You kind of knew what the input would be, even if you didn't necessarily know all the things along the way. Terrible dialogue. I will say, I think the actors tried really fucking hard. That's why this is not like this isn't a half-star movie for me. This is like a 1.5 star, because I think there are a couple actors who tried their damnedest here. I think Frank Grillo did a good enough job of being kind of the stern, capable dude. Elizabeth Mitchell, like you said, I think it felt like Elizabeth Mitchell was in a better movie, and they just spliced her scenes into this one. Because every time she's on screen, I'm like, oh, Elizabeth, you're so much better than this. There's even a girl, and she has I looked her up afterwards. I thought she had so much potential. The actress is named Betty Gabriel. She played this character named Lainey, who is like a kind of a reformed gangster who now helps people out at night during the Purge. Mm-hmm. And I thought that there was a lot of potential for that character. They set her up extraordinarily well as someone who I thought, like, man, I'm really interested. And unfortunately, they just kind of don't know what to do with this character. They set her up as this badass, and then she just kind of comes along for the ride. It's such a haphazard movie, and that's really problematic for me when I want to see something. I want to see. When I go to the cinema, I want to see movies where there's some sort of deliberate thought put into them, whatever it is. If you're going to make a movie that's about fart jokes, make the best, most deliberate fart jokes you can. If you want to make a high drama, you make it work. This is such a half measure in so many points. I just can't recommend it to people. And there's people that like this franchise. And if you like the previous ones, go enjoy them. I mean, I'm not going to take away your joy, but for me, this is like. I watched 4 movies at the cinema this weekend. 3 of them were like 5-star movies. I picked extraordinarily well on the other ones, and then The Purge was in that mix too. And it was just like, oh fuck, really? Yeah, this is a hard pass for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, we watched 3 movies this weekend at the movie theater, and this was definitely kind of probably at the bottom, but the other movies were really great too. So that it speaks more, like I said, to the quality of other movies we saw than to this one. It was weird. Well, I get what you're saying. I think some of the characters in this movie are caricatures. They're not characters. So you have a mix of real characters like the senator and the Frank Grillo character, Leo Barnes. And you mentioned the woman who drives the van. Mm-hmm. Those are real characters on one side, and then you have these caricatures that are, and I think that's intentional. I just don't know if the mix, obviously the mix doesn't work for you. Right. It seems like it's caught in between that world. I kind of liked some of the caricature stuff, and not the ones, there was one near the beginning that really set me on edge, and that was let's just say it happens in a store, okay?
Yeah, that was the movie.
Was that your low point, Will?
I think so, yeah.
Oh man, there's something about that character that just got me buzzing. Not I didn't like the character obviously, but it was it gave me something like, whoa, what is going on here?
Mhm.
And I don't know. It's the caricatures near the end, and we'll get into spoilers, that I didn't really like. It was so. I mean, we've seen it before. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen that it was on the nose, yes, but a caricature is on the nose, and those were come on. We've seen this before. We actually saw it in the last movie, for fuck's sake. So why do you have to do it again? I don't know. The whole election year thing seemed very gimmicky, and I think kind of watered down what I think is the exciting premise of these movies. And I'm not a guy who loves violence in movies. I don't. This movie uses violence to try to make points, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In this movie, I'm not sure it worked for me.
You mentioned the word caricature, and I think that's a very apt way of putting it. Like, I enjoy good caricature, but you're absolutely right. This film has some caricature, some good caricature, and some bad caricature, and then it has some very grounded characters, some of which are good and bad. So it's such a weird, uneven mix. You know, I think about a movie like, you think about caricature. Like, I think about a movie which I think is one of the better movies of the decade, Idiocracy. Is a movie that is all about caricature. Every single character in that is completely over the top and weird. And it works so well because it keeps building, and it builds to this ridiculousness, which is at the core of the political satire. That, to me, is the way that you can handle something like this. Like, I don't necessarily need this to be a super grounded film. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just want them to kind of pick a direction and to competently steer towards it. And it feels more like they're just kind of randomly kind of plodding through the process.
Yeah. Brad, do you have anything before we jump into spoilers?
Yeah, I don't think there's much else to say. I think I kind of fall squarely between both of you guys. I like being in the middle of the Movie Bears podcast. Sandwich, what did I say? You know, I definitely get what you're saying, Will, and as I said, this is by no means a great movie. I just think, I don't know. There's some stuff there to enjoy. There's certainly a lot there that is kind of craptastic too. But I don't know. I think, listeners, you're going to have to make the determination for yourself in terms of whether these movies are worthwhile. Jim, you kind of mentioned earlier, you know, like you thought maybe this took place on Halloween, and I was talking about the whole haunted house thing, and like gosh, the more I think about it, the more these almost seem like Halloween films in a way. Like they take place
At night with masks.
At night with masks and weapons and. Dude, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like a really anxious person or something, but like I had crazy like home invasion dreams after seeing this latest movie. Like it was weird. So I know these movies are kind of craptastic in a way, and it's got me wondering, like, how is it a movie like this can like get into my psyche and like have this kind of effect? You know what I mean? I don't know, but that's interesting to me, I guess. Like, why does this movie freak me out a little bit when like a Freddy Krueger movie like makes me laugh? You know what I mean? I'm trying to pick into that and figure that out.
Well, there's certainly a lot of comedy inherent in the Krueger story, but I mean, certainly home invasion is something that at its core, like, yeah, it's a real thing. Like, it unsettles us on a very, like, yeah, this can happen to me. Whereas, like, yeah, I don't know if like a demon's going to attack me in my sleep. Like that one, I can probably like brush off as like being like more the land of fairy tales. But I think for me, when you hit on the home invasion thing, like, and it is something that terrifies me too. I think part of the reason, also, like, this one's a little hard for me to recommend, is that I think that I can think of two better home invasion movies that have come out this year, and that being Hush, which is on Netflix right now, and then the Fede Alvarez movie, Don't Breathe, which is coming out in theaters very soon. We saw it at South by Southwest, and I think both of those were more effective at making me like double check to make sure my doors are locked, which that's a reason to watch horror movies, is to get that uncomfortable feeling. But it's just hard when like I think there's other people doing it better.
Yeah.
All right.
Before we get into spoil, I just say I wish there was something better that came out of the political plot line of this movie. I didn't get anything at all out of that, other than there were some people who wanted to purge and some people who wanted to not purge, and that's really all I got from it. And I know this movie wants to talk about violence. It wants to talk about racial issues and class issues and everything jumbled together, and it doesn't really come across clear on any of them. You know what I mean? It doesn't give me a reaction on any of them. So
yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well, guys, how do we feel about a very brief spoiler section? Or do we not need spoilers? What do you think?
You said, Brad, you wanted to talk about something in spoilers. I forget what it was.
Oh, it was just in regards to the date, like when the purge takes place, but we kind of answered that.
Yeah. It takes place March 21st to March 22nd, and that's corroborated by something that we see later in the film.
Right.
But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do spoilers. I think we can kind of do last thoughts and then move over to plugs. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Bank a couple minutes.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Because we kind of made some room earlier for discussion about movies that we really sort of unanimously loved, and so you know what, if we're stealing from Peter to pay Paul, I'm good with that. That's fine.
Let's steal from the bad movie to talk about the good movies.
Right? It is the Purge.
Way to do it.
It is the Purge. All crime is legal during the Purge. So
I will just say my parting thought is I wanted this movie to end a different way than it ended. A much different way than it ended. Because, anyway, I'm not going to... I don't want to spoil.
Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do spoilers for 2 minutes so we can talk about the ending, and then we'll move to plugs. Let's compromise. Are we good with that? Does that work?
Sure, yeah.
All right. Spoilers, brief, for the Purge election year are fair game. If you continue to listen, you do so at your own peril, giving you time to reach out, hit the pause button if you need to. Okay, if you're still listening, it's your fault. So, Jim, the ending that you were alluding to, of course... She gets elected.
The ending is too pat. She gets saved. She gets elected, and who knows what happens after that? I don't know. To me, if this universe wants to keep going, to me, the Purge should have been successful in wiping out the force of good that wanted to take it down. I would have liked to have seen a subversive ending. I mean, that might have made the difference for me. I don't know. Maybe it would have been too over the top, and people would have been like, "Oh my God, they killed the good candidate. This world is really evil." You know, I don't know.
But that's what would have worked for me, and that's part of why I hate this franchise so much, is that it wants to create this crazy political intrigue thing, but it does so by making all of the good guys super obvious good guys and all of the bad guys super obvious bad guys, so that by the time resolution comes, this has for a film that's about political ambiguity, it has about as much nuance as a 5-year-old describing the concepts of good and bad. What I would have loved to have seen, imagine this. Imagine if the good senator that that wants to get rid of the Purge, the Elizabeth Mitchell character, what if she, there at the end, realizes, hey, you know what? For the greater good, I should kill this guy during Purge night. And imagine if she then is able to accomplish her mission of moving forward by doing the thing that she set out to not do. That, to me, would have shown some, some balls. That would have shown some, the ability to kind of, dive right in. And instead, it doesn't. It backs away from having teeth and makes our shining white hat wear that shining white hat all the way.
No, she wore a white blouse.
She has that realization, and then she goes up on a bridge and she's singing about the stars and how her life has been all about this quest only to destroy it herself, and she leaps off the bridge and plunges to her icy death. Oh wait, that was Les Miserables.
Anyway. I wonder why Les Mis is a classic. I wonder if we'll be talking about the Purge in years.
Oh, and by the way, a nice little drone scene.
Yeah. Oh, that was awesome. I loved the usage of the drone. That was.
I wanted to see more from the drone.
Yes. Yeah.
It made me afraid our drone was going to get shot down someday. So.
Yeah, and I don't believe for a second that he could shoot a drone down out of the sky with a pistol from 25 yards.
And it was a blind shot. Remember, she said.
Yeah, in the dark.
he turns into a snapshot. Like, he didn't actually line it up and aim. He just, yeah. Anyway, movie magic.
Yeah.
He's just that good, guys.
Yeah, because he's the shining white hat.
But Will, I guess you didn't like the part of the movie that kind of thrilled me the most, that kind of set me at unease the most, which was that those two little punk girls who like were giving the shop owner a hard time, and then came back later with the car. I mean, that was creepy to me. I don't know. Maybe people in costume just freaked me out. I don't know.
It would have been better if her dialogue wasn't so stupid. I couldn't help laughing when she's like, "I'm gonna come get that candy bar." She said "candy bar" like 40 fucking times. I laughed. I was the asshole that laughed during a scary movie during that, just because if she had done anything else, maybe I would have bought in more. But it's like, I mean, come on, script writing 101. The dialogue was so bad.
Yeah. Didn't work for you, but like I said, that was probably the highlight of the movie for me. And then what do? They fucking kill her off,
summarily, yeah.
The Act 1. Ah, boy. Whatever. Can't win them all.
That's true. All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and move on to some plugs here as we look to wrap up. Will, what have you got this week?
I mentioned that I had seen some fantastic movies this week, in addition to The Purge, one of which was Swiss Army Man. Another one that I saw that I strongly recommend to people, especially if you're documentary fans, is a documentary called Wiener. And no, it's not about what you might think. This is a documentary about...
It's about the dog, right?
Yeah, it's about actually Todd Solondz's Wiener Dog came out the same weekend that this documentary came out, and it confused me for a second. Like, shit, which should I see? So anyway, Wiener it's a documentary about Anthony Weiner. He's this politician out of New York who established himself as this firebrand. It's kind of like an up-and-comer, and then he fell victim to a flashing his dick
Purge
on Twitter scandal. This film kind of picks up right after that, where he tries to dive back into the political arena with a mayoral run. He tries to run for the mayor of New York. They get unprecedented access. I mean, these documentarians are with him the entire step of the way, behind closed doors on some interesting things. You really get to see two sides of a character, the firebrand and also the dude who's like, terrible actions and his pride definitely become very strong character flaws. Very humanizing documentary, and also I might go on record and say this is the funniest movie of the year. Like, these filmmakers find some great comedy just in terms of like the things that are said, some clips of all of the funny headlines that came out of it. Smart editing choices. Like, I laughed as much to this movie as I did maybe anything else, save for like Nice Guys. I think those are probably the movies I laughed at the most this year. But yeah, Wiener, it's a really good documentary. Like, you should absolutely check it out. If I don't know who I'd recommend this to. I guess fans of documentaries, but it's quite good. It's really good.
Let it be known that Will likes Wiener.
I love Wiener.
Yeah,
I'm a Wiener fan. What can I say?
So, as a politician, is he for or against the Purge? That's the important question.
Well, the great thing about this film is that it actually kind of finds the nuance in the character. We get to see him as, both his flaws and his strengths. So, I don't know. I don't think he fits in the Purge world.
Yeah, probably not. Purge hasn't happened yet.
Not yet.
Maybe someday. I don't know. Let's hope not. For me this week, I am going to put something on your radar. It's not happening for 20 days. So, it's a little ways out. But we were at the movies this weekend and saw a trailer. Fathom Events is doing a one-night-only showing of a film that I actually plugged a couple months ago that I'm excited for, Batman the Killing Joke. The new animated film from DC is going to be in theaters July 25th. And they're doing two showings that night. There's a 7:30 and a 10 p.m. So if you want to see... Is it rated R? I forget. Yes, it is rated R.
Rated R Batman and Robin?
It is a rated Robin ? It is a rated R Batman and Joker animated film. Of course, we've got Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy coming back to reprise their roles. They are my definitive Batman and the Joker. So I'm pumped for this. It's a Monday night, however, and of course we're recording that night, so I don't know how that's going to work. But anyway, if
10
you're
o'clock
interested,
show.
that could work too. Maybe just stay up really late. But put it on your calendars, July 25th, Batman the Killing Joke at your local movie theater. Jim, close us out. What you got?
I'd be down. I'd be down for some Batman if we can get there. Anyway, my plug is for a film I caught this weekend on Netflix called Team Foxcatcher, and it's a documentary about the life of wrestler Dave Schultz and also the tragedy that befell Dave Schultz at the hands of John DuPont. This was a well-publicized story. It was also fictionalized in the movie called Foxcatcher that starred Steve Carell and Channing Tatum, who played, I think it was Mark Schultz, who was Dave Schultz's brother. This documentary attempts to, it's factual. It shows what really happened. It was really eye-opening and a really tragic story about what I see as just mental illness. I mean, you have this guy, John DuPont. He was the heir to like millions and millions of dollars of the DuPont family, but he was very much a loner, very much alone. He didn't have family. He was desperate for recognition and desperate for love and attention, and he surrounded himself in sport with these wrestlers, and he started his own ranch for training wrestlers and trained world champions, and I mean this was a real deal. And just eventually the paranoia and just mental illness just took its toll, and it was the most amazing thing to me was like how the people around him, who were intelligent people, kind of saw the signs, but really no one did anything because he was a rich, influential guy who was taking care of all these people. Just a really, really tragic story. It's called Team Foxcatcher, and you can get it right now on Netflix.
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's I didn't like Foxcatcher all that much. I loved Team Foxcatcher. Good pick.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, it's interesting to me, like, to be watching like a high def documentary, and then all of a sudden you're like watching this archival footage from like, VHS in like 1995 or whenever it's coming from. But I don't know. Mental illness obviously is a thing, right? But seeing this documentary really makes me wonder, like, how many people I know in my personal life right now who I see on Facebook every day making passive-aggressive comments about how alone they are and how they don't know what the depths of their loneliness is going to do to them. It makes me a little afraid for, like, those people and what I don't know. I don't know. Do you guys ever get that feeling that, like, maybe someone could really be struggling like this guy was?
I do, but what's, when they, at least they're expressing themselves that way. You know what I mean? At least they're making people aware of how they feel.
Right.
This guy totally kept it all hidden from everybody. I mean,
Right.
there were outward signs of crazy things he would do, but he never, like, came out and said, "Oh my, I'm so lonely," and, what should I do? And he was just like quietly disturbed, this guy, and that's what's really, really scary about it.
Yeah.
And not to say that one is better than the other. Obviously, anybody who feels that way, hopefully they'll find a way to overcome that. But yeah, this was just a really tragic situation.
Yeah, we have a problem in this country with stigmatizing mental illness to the point where access to mental health care is hard to afford for a lot of people, and it's also, air quotes, embarrassing too, just because we have such a stigma around it. So it's sad when you see people like making those types of posts, because it's often them trying to find some sort of outlet. And there are other outlets out there. It's just we're not in a place where we make those readily available to people. So it's it doesn't as much scare me as much as it like makes me very sad, I think is what it does.
Yeah. And in this case, the resources were there for this for John DuPont. It's just that the awareness wasn't there, and he did. The people around him, I think, were just afraid of him. I mean, they were.
Yeah.
He had the money, but he just didn't have the awareness and the pride, of course, of being this prominent millionaire guy. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm just.
He had them by the purse strings, like that's,
Right.
there wasn't any incentive for them to say anything because then they would lose their meal ticket. So it's just a sad situation.
Great documentary. Absolutely. All right. Well, that wraps us up for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Those of you who are listening live, great to have you on board. Those of you listening digital tape delay, glad to have you guys with us as well. Next weekend. Or next
Secret
week's
Life
show,
of
Secret
Pets.
Life of Pets, I think, right?
Yep, right.
Yeah.
It's a pet day for us.
It's a pet day. That's right. We're going to bring all of our pets on.
Bring your pets to work day.
We're going to talk in different voices for them. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Hopefully
maybe.
hopefully no injuries will result.
Fingers crossed. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
All right, everyone. Well, have a great week. We will see you next time. And hey, if you've enjoyed this episode, feel free to check out our back catalog. You can find our previous episodes on iTunes, Stitcher Radio. You can go to our website, moviebearspodcast.com. Feel free to check it out. And hey, just want to give a quick shout out to Movie Bears Podcast TV as well. We talked about the season 6 finale of Game of Thrones last week. That episode hit Thursday or Friday. So if you haven't listened to it yet and you want to hear us and our take on the crazy ending of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I heard something happened. Some show ended. Yeah.
Yeah, something about snow. I don't know.
Something about fire. I don't know.
I don't. Winter is Coleman. I don't know. But
Winter's cumin?
winter is cumin. Well, that's why cumin is in chili, right? I mean, it's a winter food.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. See you next time. See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.